Hello and welcome. I'm Corey Buckta with the City of Wichita Office of Community Services. Here with me for our second installment is Park and Recreation Director Troy Houtman and Management Fellow Adam Nebenzahl. We're responding to questions and concerns regarding the proposed tree policy for the City of Wichita. Troy, Adam, thank you for being here again. We've gotten a lot of questions on forum, and there have been a few stories in the local media. A major concern that has been raised is the limitations of the proposed policy. So my first question is, what is the benefit of creating a policy that applies to city trees on public property rather than establishing rules that would apply to private property owners?
So a couple things I wanted to share is what the major concerns that came out were actually from issues that the city probably failed to take care of some trees. And so one of the ideas is that we really wanted to make sure that we have quality tree protection within our own policies, that we're following those and that we are good stewards of trees and that we have very transparent policies that everybody can follow and understand and hold ourselves accountable. And from that, we would like to see the other governmental agencies in the area, the county, some of the other municipalities follow and do the same. A lot of the issues that came up were in regards to some of our construction projects, such as the baseball stadium, and the big one that was a really concern in the media was the water treatment plant. And so those are some of the things we really wanted to do, and from that we have a strong foundation that will address private properties. And if we can't do our own tree protection ourselves and do it on our own property, how can we expect anybody else to do it as well? So I think this is a great place to start, and just because we are doing and focusing our policies on city property, I think there's tons of opportunities, and as we know, there's a lot of private property that really makes up the tree canopy. We really want those folks to jump on the bandwagon, not necessarily be forced to do it, but jump on understanding the impacts and what kind of great things they can do from the private perspective.
Yeah, so it's not asking people to do something that we're not yet doing. Yeah, makes sense. Also on forum, we had another question from Richard Ruth, who asked, how does this policy apply to, say, Evergy, for example, when they are doing work in the easement?
Yeah, that's a great question. Actually, I just recently had a meeting with Kansas Gas. And we had a lot of discussion about how they operate in the utility easements, what's that going to entail, how's that going to impact them. One of the things was concerning about how we're going to plant in those easements, which we probably shouldn't, and that's probably going to be the focus of planting in other locations. What do we do in an emergency situation where there's a power line down and the only way to reach it is to actually take out a tree, or we have a water utility that busts? How do we take care of that? That's in the utility, and the only way that we could get to it is actually removing a tree. It happens in the middle of the night. These are all things that we still need to work out, and I think this is why we do these things, is to get these questions. And so I had a chance to meet with Kansas Gas, but I think in the broader perspective we probably need to meet with some of the other utilities as well and get some feedback from our water utility, because they're in the same situation. So that's why we're building in more time to develop the policy, because we know that there's a lot of other stakeholders involved with this.
Great. So another question. Let's say a new development is being built somewhere in Wichita. Would this policy apply to that development as well?
As we stated previously in what's been on the policy, and I think Troy touched a lot on that, is that this policy is for city projects only and city development. So if it's a private developer or a utility company or a regional corridor, it wouldn't affect them in that situation. Again, this is for city properties, city projects on city easement.
Got it. There was some conversation on forum regarding heritage trees. So can you explain what is meant by heritage trees in the policy?
Yeah, so heritage trees are a very well-known program throughout the United States. Larger cities like Austin or Seattle have these programs. And so usually what they do is they factor in specific things about the trees, the aspects of trees that make them special, and then give them special status to ensure and show how special they are to the community and make them harder to remove. And so what we're proposing for this city tree policy and this city tree heritage program is that it must exceed what is commonly found in the area regarding size and for the species that is presented in terms of diameter or canopy spread, things like that.
Is there a process outlined in the policy for designating a tree as a heritage tree?
Yeah, absolutely. So what we have is that we'll be designing an application, and any member of the public can go out and find trees on city property and apply for them to become heritage trees. And so the application will be submitted to Troy, the Park and Recreation Director, and he'll review the application and bring ones that are acceptable to the Park Board of Commissioners, and from there the Park Board will determine whether or not that tree is suitable to become one. And then what we're going to do after that is even have an area on the city's website under the Park and Recreation or Forestry area of the website where they'll actually be able to see the trees and be able to, there'll be a GPS location, they can go find that tree and go admire it and go see it.
Excellent. Going back to questions from forum, if we need to remove one or more trees and it does not make sense for a new tree to be placed in the same location, how does the policy prioritize where a new tree or trees are placed? And similarly, it was asked if we could prioritize places where there is currently a lack of trees.
So most definitely, and I'm going to share an example, is over at McAdams we have Brewer Recreation Center, newly renamed after our former Mayor Brewer. And we're looking at almost doubling the size of the recreation center. I think it's close to 15,000 square feet. We're adding a new gym and some other areas. It's going to impact some trees, unfortunately. But what we want to do is following this policy is that there's going to be opportunities to replace that trees by the same amount of diameter of those trees somewhere else. We might not want to plant them right next to the building. That's not a good idea. And so part of this policy is we're going to be working on planting locations throughout the city. It's not necessarily in just one area, but if it doesn't make sense to replace a tree in the same spot, we want to find other locations where we can do that. And there's going to be a kind of like a land bank of locations where we can do that. And those trees will have less of an impediment to other things such as utilities or other buildings or structures or streets. And we always have the same situation that if we plant too close to a driveway or to sidewalks, those roots end up pushing up that concrete. So one of the things that we always talk about is the right tree at the right place, or the right place for the right tree. And either way works, but that's something we want to do is put that in place. So there's an area where we can put replacement trees in that's going to have a great chance of success.
If I may add on to that really quickly as well, Public Works is currently working with NASA right now to develop a project to get an overall scan of our tree canopy. And I think they even want to look at it over a specific period of time as well. And so what we're hoping is that with that study, we'll be able to see areas that maybe have less trees and maybe need an increased amount of density. And so we can prioritize there and overlay that with other median income areas or kind of other facts like that and get an understanding of our tree policy and where to focus on planting trees. So like Troy said, plant the right tree in the right place, even on a broader citywide scale.
Yeah, that's a good point to point out as well. Now going to the YouTube comments, there's one from Christopher that says there needs to be a checks and balances on the forestry department when it comes to removing trees in front of people's homes. Would this policy account for that?
So I think we definitely want to have something in there in regards to protecting trees. And what forestry does is they remove these trees if they are of a danger or they're dead or dying. So specifically we have arborists that go out and check those. And we've had situations where residents have asked, can they have a healthy tree removed? Now, that goes through a different process. When that happens, they have to apply for a permit. It comes through the arborist's office, and then eventually it comes to me to make that decision or choice. So we do have some extra checks in place to make sure that we're not going to be removing any healthy trees. That's one of the biggest concerns that I have, is I want to make sure that we are going through all the processes to make sure that if we're going to be removing a tree, it's because it's either dead or a dangerous situation or dying.
Got it. Another question from the YouTube comments. Steve Howard asks, if private development is not covered, can this policy still be used to cover publicly funded development along the river?
So that's a really good question. That's something that we have been talking about, and we're going to share this with council next week. Council, we have a workshop, and we've heard this through several different suggestions, and we want to make sure that council is aware of it and that they understand the question, and we'll have them help us, give us an idea of what direction they want to go. So, a good example is just on Tuesday there's unveiling of a new plan that's right across the street from the baseball stadium, and it's right on the banks of the river. And when that goes in, that's actually going to probably impact about 6 or 7 trees. One tree in particular is rather old, and I know this because I drive by it almost every day. And seeing what came out on Tuesday for the first time, I saw where the impact is going to be, and I'm looking as I'm driving by that tree. What I'd really like to see is making sure that there's replacement of that tree canopy somewhere else, particularly somewhere else up and down the river. So I think something that we want to make sure that council is aware of, so they can help us dictate how this policy is going to be impacting not just city property, but developments that are city sponsored as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. There's another question from the YouTube comments, and this is great, by the way. Please keep them coming. Would replacement trees be available? Naomi, can you scroll to the side a little bit there?
Oh, yes.
So, thanks. Would replacement trees be available for private property in areas with high demolition rates?
I don't think we've necessarily finalized exactly how we're going to decide. There's no formula exactly yet to where we're going to decide on where to plant those trees, of where they can be replaced. However, I do believe that that is a significant factor as we look forward in determining where do trees need to be placed. Does it need to be placed in an area with high demolition? Does it need to be placed in an area of lower median income that technically has had less trees in the past? So I think these are all important factors that Richard, who commented on that, I think has made a great point. I think that's something that we need to be aware of and write that down and take that into a factor as we move forward with that policy direction.
Great. Another comment from Christopher says, if they believe a tree needs removed, there needs to be a documented paper trail showing the reason why, supported by testing and not opinion. Would the policy cover that?
So we do that already. When a tree is inspected, there's a paper trail and it's inspected by our certified arborists. And there's specific reasons why those trees are being removed, primarily because it's dead or dying, or there's a major safety concern as well.
All right. Going back to some other questions we've been getting on forum, is the policy that is currently posted on wichita.gov final?
Not even close. We're getting a lot more feedback. As I mentioned, one of the areas that we really need to make sure that we go back and address is talk to the utility companies. We need to make sure that our operations feels comfortable with it as well in regards to how do we implement it. And I think that's one of the biggest concerns, is how do we implement some really strong tree protections to make sure that we're taking care of our trees. It's a change, and anytime we have a change, it's going to take some work to work through all those areas. Whether it's our planning department, engineering department, our plans review, these are all things that are going to be impacted, as well as any kind of development that the city is sponsoring. Those are all things that is going to impact. So we need to work with all those folks to put a plan together to implement some good tree protection.
We have a meeting scheduled with our engineering department to meet with some of the contractors on Monday to actually go through the policy more and answer their questions on the vision and what we have for this policy moving forward and how it can be implemented on their side and how that's going to affect budgeting for projects and everything.
Another comment and question on the YouTube feed. So what will be the next steps after workshop, and how does a policy go into effect and get communicated to other departments like Public Works, for example?
So I think you were going to touch base in regards to some of the meetings that we have still,
Yep.
and we keep adding to that list. But I'll let you run through that list, and then I'll talk a little bit more about implementation.
Yeah, so April 26th, which is next Tuesday, we'll be attending the workshop and giving our presentation. We'll be kind of giving the City Council what we've been hearing from the public, what we've been hearing from the boards, as well as an outline of what the policy is, and kind of get their feedback. What do they see? What do they want to hear? Then after that, the next day, April 27th, will be at 4:30. We'll be here at City Hall meeting with the Sustainability Integration Board on the first floor boardroom, and we'll be talking with them and getting their feedback. We did ask for their feedback as well, and they've been sending some information in on how they have, but we want to get more in-depth feedback from them in that meeting. May 2nd, we will be meeting with multiple neighborhood associations, I believe in South Wichita. It is on our forum website. With the location and the exact time from 6 to 7:30 of that location. And then May 9th, as well as May 2nd, and I think May 4th, Corey, you can correct me, you're the CSR. So, but we'll be attending, or we'll be having a video presented to the DABs, the district advisory boards of all their meetings, and they'll be giving us feedback on that situation. What do they see in their local communities, and what do they get from their local citizens, and what are they hearing from their constituents?
And will there be opportunities for public input at all of those meetings?
Absolutely.
Great. Any other chances for anyone watching this, if they want to weigh in, they can provide their feedback?
Yep, you can absolutely go to forum.wichita.gov and go to this. We originally had it going until April 27th. However, we felt that because we're going to be continuing this public engagement effort, we actually want to extend it to May 9th, which is the last District Advisory Board meeting. So instead of April 27th, you can now comment until May 9th. In that situation, and so please go on forum and comment more and give us more of your feedback. We've been really appreciating all the discussions that have been going on there. At least 20 different people have been commenting.
And when do you plan to finalize the policy?
So, like I mentioned, we're getting continuous feedback, and we're going to still make some adjustments as we move forward. I don't anticipate this really going into effect until midsummer, and even at that, we might still need to make some adjustments. And how do we implement that with our other departments? We're just going to have to sit down and make sure that they understand and how it is going to impact them, and putting in processes so we can follow things. There's paper trails that we want to make sure that are put in place. We want to make sure that people are held responsible as well. So those are all things that we need to put into our policies, and it doesn't happen overnight, so it takes a lot of communication. Whenever we're making a change, it's difficult because there's things that people might not feel comfortable with, but we still need to go through and make those changes.
Great, thanks. Again, Troy, Adam, thank you both for taking the time to answer some questions today. Thank you all for watching. You can join the discussion on forum at forum.wichita.gov. All of those events are listed, those opportunities for public input. And again, this is going to the district advisory boards in May, so May 2nd, May 4th, and May 9th for those respective boards. Thank you again for your participation.